In their manifesto, Moora Moora describe an alternative to suburban living, away from the loneliness, isolation, alienation, and superficiality. Their alternative lies just over an hour away from Melbourne CBD.
And we moved up in, I think, August 74. Yeah, we got the land in June 74 and we moved up in August. This is our cluster. It was one of the first ones established, and we've got 4 houses here.
To come and start a community, you must think that, there really is something fundamentally wrong with Western society at large, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's going on there in your opinion? What do you think is at the crux of that?
Well, individualism, consumerism, materialism, technological obsession that'll solve the world and solve our problems.
By contrast here, I know everyone. I know their children, I know their parents. You just walk out the door and there's someone that you want to have a chat to. So it's very social. And so that's the strength of a cooperative.
So this thing here is like a circular collection of a bunch of stones, and basically it's like this meditative walk that you can do. So it kind of looks like a maze, but you can't get lost. So you just go around and walk through these stones and it takes you on a path. And you just walk around until you hit the end. Moora Moora celebrates 50 years today. That entire time they've been off the grid. Almost 70 people live here. They live in 6 groups, or clusters, as they say. Glen lives in a central cluster, and he keeps the place going on solar. Being in a cooperative community, the last thing I would expect to see is a Tesla.
Yeah.
That's sort of associated with like Brighton and Toorak. But it totally makes sense if you've got the EV charging station,
All the houses have their own solar and battery, but once their batteries are full, they export the power back to this system.
Oh, okay.
So that's what a microgrid's good for, and vice versa in wintertime when their batteries run out, this system is the backup and supplies them with energy. There's this weird thing that's happened to us, which is the thing that we call shelter, our home, is our investment. And as a result, it becomes all about building value in that investment. And houses have got really expensive. I mean, I built my house 12 years ago for $265,000. And, it's a modern house with all the modern appliances and it's centrally heated, etc. But if I was to build a house in suburbia, for a start, just the land would have cost that. And then there would be that value add of it's an investment. And so, there goes $1 million. It's ridiculous.
It is
ridiculous.
I
feel sorry for young people. It's become so expensive. I can't see home ownership being such a common thing anymore. We are in a high bushfire risk zone, so we've all got fire shelters, underground bunkers, etc. That's one over here. And so that is a concern living in this forest, but it's kind of one we kind of accept.
So just here is one of those fire bunkers that is basically a backup plan for if anything bad should happen. There's only one road in and out of this whole property, so this is really the plan B. So if they're unable to get anywhere, we've got this place that's about the size of a shipping crate container in here, and they just sort of hunker down until the fire passes. Can't imagine just sort of waiting in here until that blows over. You definitely want to trust in the science, wouldn't you?
We talk about having a cost of living crisis. Well, that's because you live individually, by yourself. You don't share anything. And you want it new. And you want it now.
So community living is, would you say, more important than ever, given the economic situation of the world that we're in?
Well, I think community living is a very important part of the economics of sharing and reducing your footprint. If I live in a house of 12 people, extended family, my per capita footprint is dramatically cut.
So how has it changed your perspective being so detached from that and up here in the community? So when you go back down into the city and see everything that you initially wanted to get away from, how is it seeing that now, 50 years later?
Well, I think it's worse.
Yeah.
I think it's worse. I think the crisis is more pressing, but when the gap between the need and the capacity is too great, you need a lot of intervention to close that gap. And that's what's missing. So we don't say there's an existential crisis in our culture as well as with the climate. and the two are intermeshed. We should see the city as a cluster of villages rather than as a centre with the periphery. I think it's a reconstructing the city as a collection of villages. And that involves owning that if we're going to save the environmental crisis as well as the social crisis, we need to invest in living locally.
Wow, so a house around here to buy costs about, they were saying, around $200,000. And to get in here, you have to have one share as an individual, or 2 shares, or 1.5 shares as a couple. So anyway, practically what that means is it costs anywhere between $20,000 or maybe $30,000 to get in here. But then you can get a house for $200K, which is, initially when this started, it was about getting away from the city and getting away from that isolated suburban living. But I'm wondering now, as we move into this environment where the median house price in Melbourne, which you can see from the hill, is closing in on $1 million, if you can come and live up here in a house that you can purchase outright for $200K, that's starting to look really attractive. But Moora Moora hasn't taken on any new residents in a while now. It's a lengthy process by design, so both sides understand what they're in for. First, you need to visit, which you can do on the first Sunday of every month. If you like it, you can then come along for a work day, which is also the first Sunday of every month. Current members are also expected to attend these days monthly in order to stay in the community. They need to work 6 hours formally and attend 6 hours of informal socialising to meet the minimum requirements, as set out in the active membership policy. After completing a workday, you can then become a friend with a refundable payment of $200. After 3 months of ongoing involvement as a friend, you can then apply to become a non-member resident, or NMR. After 9 months of being an NMR, you can then apply to become a member, provided that you have demonstrated active involvement in all aspects of the community, such as attending workdays, meetings, joining committees, and so on. In Sun is the latest and greatest member. She's been here since 2017.
But then, like in the suburban city life, you don't know people, you're individual. If you don't have enough savings or whatever backup, then you're in trouble.
You're in big trouble.
Yeah. So I think in that regards, I think this community can sort of send some messages, because the housing here is compared to suburban area is a different ball of game, right?
Yeah.
And then there's security and also close to nature, and what the nature is important for us.
And you said during the meeting before that you'd like to see it be made more accessible to new members. So in your experience, was it not very accessible, like to join, or how do you mean that you would like it to be more accessible for new people to join?
Right, okay. The reason I'm saying is because me came as a couple with me and my partner, and then we were working on the garden, and then we try to engage in, and then during the process, then we found, I can understand, people have to live here together, and they make sure that those people get along in the community. I think it's very important. But then also, get along has to be in a wider, broad perspective, rather than someone has to agree with you. Because someone can listen to you, that doesn't mean necessarily they have to agree with you. So I think we really need to listen to different people, different ideas, and then we can also respect the differences. And then that way, I think the community can include more different people. Yeah, and then not only, how can I say, it's good to work with someone say yes, 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 and then all that. But then if some people say no and no few things, and then it's the opportunity, what the person has different ideas, maybe why the person want to do differently. And there's something why we're doing here, and there's something we're doing here, maybe there's a room to be improved.
So I've just taken a bit of time to chill, drink a bit of wine in the back of the car. It's been a full-on day of talking to people. So how have you found everything today, Mara? Your first intentional community. How do you find the people? How do you find the place?
Yeah, it's been definitely a different experience than what I'm used to. It's made me think a lot about, the way we live. It's made me think a lot about myself, actually. But yeah, obviously, first impressions are what a beautiful, beautiful environment. Just observing even the children here, they're also confident and the way they just interact with people. It's just so different to children who grow up in the city, in my opinion. Yeah, there's loads of thoughts actually.
This wind is absolutely roaring here, as is the party that's underway up top. So it's about 9 o'clock now. Looks like the party and the drinking is well and truly underway, so let's go check it out.
You know, this place attracts people that have some money, and people that generally have money are older. We don't need any more older people here. If we're going to survive another 50 years, you know, we need to work out how we get families up here, younger families.
Do you know the story behind that?
Wasn't
Fucker!
you know, the younger generation up here, we need to work out how we're going to support them to do that, like, because we expect them to become a member, which costs $20-something thousand. And then it's expected that they buy a home or that they rent, or if there's something available to rent. You know, it's a fair chunk for people that are younger, and that I think turns a lot of people off.
Oh, definitely not hungover. Let's go try and find some coffee.
Finding people in the...
So back in the day, there were a couple of students at Monash, and they were interested in alternative off-grid living. And this was a windmill that they designed. So they were able to put it here on the property. Pretty wacky looking windmill. They weren't able to get it working, obviously, otherwise all windmills would look like that. But yeah, you can sort of see and hear the machinery behind it. So some sort of voltometers over there, and there's my coffee. But yeah, that's sort of the guts of it. And yeah, it's a pretty wild looking thing. I wasn't really sure what it was when I first came here, but it turns out to be a windmill. There's not a lot of young people here in their, say, like 20s or even 30s. It's a real problem that the community here is facing, is that there's a widening generational gap, and if that becomes too extreme or severe, then it becomes impossible to recruit new members, you know, young people with new ideas and new energy, because they just think to themselves, oh, I don't want to be here around all these old people, you know. And it's sort of approaching that stage now where it's something that they're talking about and they've identified, and you know, it's something that they need to deal with, is get younger people in here for that new energy and those perspectives, and to keep it ticking over. So it's actually a community that's really in danger of sort of expiring.
If they wanted to radically change how this place works, for example, sharing property, ownership of property, or even having like co-housing, having people living in this big lodge again, this big building we're in, having young people, you know, which would attract young people because it would be cheap and they'd be sharing things and living together and having fun together and parties together and everything, like they used to, the people, Aboriginal people here. That just wouldn't really work here. The rest of the community would find it very hard to adjust to that. There'd be a big schism between old and new. The young people wouldn't feel like they're part of Moora Moora. They'd feel like they're part of this house. Young. So to do something radical like that would be a big step for this community. So I'll be eternally grateful to Moora Moora, what's given to me, you know, how it's made me who I am. It's a beautiful place. When I come back here, I romanticise it, of course, but it is a gorgeous place, as you've ever seen yourself, you know, gorgeous people. That's good.
Anyway, so that's Moora Moora. Go check it out. It's just over an hour away from Melbourne. They've got visitor days every first Sunday of every month. Everyone's really friendly, so get up there and go check it out. They've got heaps of information on their website about different visitor days and stuff like that, so I'll leave the link in the description if you're interested. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.